Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes. Hi Krishna everyone, so good afternoon, thank you so much for coming. We have a bit of time this afternoon. I didn't have a specific verse, so I don't know if anyone here has any topic or any question you have or something you're interested in. Then I can try to go with any of your topics should you have something, otherwise I will choose. Does anyone have? You can give me some random thoughts if you have something that's on your mind or something you'd like to know more about, if there is anyone.
3 modes of material nature.
3 modes of material nature? Yeah, gita. Okay, very good. Okay, so let's bring that in. Anything else?
The fluctuation of enthusiasm.
The fluctuation of enthusiasm. Okay. Anything else?
Maharaj, we would also like to know the character of Rishabh Dev from Bhagavad, and why he was like completely surrendered his body. He was like in animal shape. I was reading something. Why he was like in animal form for like 3 days and then in the form of snake for 4 days, and why he was like this.
Okay. Well, we got quite a variety there. Okay, let me see if I can.
And it should
We
be
can
from Gita.
somehow like that.
You wanted us from
Gita,
Gita?
and
this
it
will
will be Gita.
one-on-one.
Yeah. This will be one. But we can try and bring it in. Okay, let's try to bring these all together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, let me begin somewhere and then see where we go. So I'm going to read from chapter number Okay, I'm going to read from chapter number 16, entitled The Divine and Demoniac Natures. And I'm going to read from text number 8. So this is Krishna speaking to Arjuna. Asatyam apatistam te jagat ahuranishwaram aparasparasam bhutam kimanyat kamahaitukam. Asatyam, unreal, apratistam, without foundation, they, jagat, the cosmic manifestation, ahu, say, anishwaram, with no controller, aparaspara, without cause, sambhutam, arisen, kimanyat, there is no other cause, kamahaitukam, it is due to lust only. So this is Krishna now speaking to Arjuna, and he's talking about those who are opposite to the divine, those who are of what we call demoniac nature. Demon doesn't just mean someone with like 3 eyes and like 100 hands and like, throwing firebolts. Demoniac means one who tries to take the supreme absolute truth out of the picture. So this is what Krishna says the demoniac mentality is. They say this world is unreal, with no foundation, no God in control. They say it is produced of sex desire and has no cause other than lust. Purport. The demoniac conclude that the world is phantasmagoria. There is no cause and effect, no controller, no purpose. Everything is unreal. They say that this cosmic manifestation arises due to chance, material actions and reactions. They do not think that this world was created by God for a certain purpose. They have their own theory that the world has come about in its own way and that there is no reason to believe that there is a God behind it. For them, there is no difference between spirit and matter. They do not accept the Supreme Spirit. Everything is matter only, and the whole cosmos is supposed to be a mass of ignorance. According to them, everything is void, and whatever manifestation exists is due to our ignorance and perception. They take it for granted that all manifestation of diversity is a display of ignorance. Just as in a dream we may create so many things which actually have no existence. Then when we are awake, we shall see that everything is simply a dream. But factually, although the demons say that life is a dream, they are very expert in enjoying this dream. And so instead of acquiring knowledge, they become more and more implicated in their dream land. It goes on, but I'll just stop there. Om Agyan Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gauri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Here Krishna is making a very, very strong point. People are so foolish that they look at the world and they say it came about by chance. There's a famous story of Sherlock Holmes and Watson. I don't know if you know Sherlock Holmes and Watson, but Sherlock Holmes was a detective and Watson was his assistant. So he said one day they went for camping and they set up everything and then they went to sleep in their sleeping bag and they were sleeping next to each other. So halfway in the middle of the night, they both woke up. They were lying next to each other, sleeping next to each other. So they were looking up. And then Sherlock Holmes said to Watson, he said, "What do you see?" So Watson looked up and he said, "I see thousands of stars. It means that there must be so many galaxies. It must mean there's so many planets." Sherlock Holmes looked at Watson and he said, "Do you see anything else?" He said, "I'm looking at the clouds and I'm looking that according to meteorology, tomorrow will be a little bit of an overcast day and there will be some rain." And he said, "Do you see anything else?" He said, "I'm looking at the constellations and I'm seeing astrologically this formation is there and that this influence is going on in the world." And then Watson looked at Sherlock and he said, "What do you see?" Sherlock said, "I see that somebody has stolen our tent." It's amazing that people analyze the world so closely, yet they miss the most obvious point, that someone must have created this world. That how can there be design without a designer? How can there be order without someone controlling? How can there be laws and cycles without a lawmaker or someone who has put it into motion? It's just so obvious that if you look at the world without any predisposition, you have to conclude there's a God behind it. But the most amazing thing is, science tries to take God out of the picture. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada wanted to establish the Bhaktivedanta Institute. And he said the Bhaktivedanta Institute is the scientific wing of ISKCON. And by this, we are going to cut atheism at the roots. And so, Srila Prabhupada wanted to actually establish that there's no need for science and religion to be opposed to each other. In fact, if you look at the history of science, it's actually born from religion. The beginnings of science was born from religion, and the earliest scientists were actually believers of God. One scientist says, "All I'm doing by all of my scientific research is finding out how God did his work." Another scientist says, "Religion and science are opposed just like the thumb and the forefinger are opposed. That opposition allows me to grasp things." So science and religion are not in opposition, they just deal with different realms of knowledge. Science improves things. Spirituality improves people. Science teaches you how to do things better. Spirituality teaches you how to do better things. Science teaches you what is matter. Spirituality teaches you what matters. Science answers the questions, but spirituality questions the answers. And therefore, there's no need for spirituality and science to be opposed. They can actually work together. Here, Krishna is saying the first mistake that the materialists make is that there's nothing, it all just came randomly, a big bang. The Big Bang makes no sense at all because it's a problem from the beginning, the middle to the end of the theory. The beginning of the Big Bang theory is a problem because even if you say everything came from a Big Bang, where did all that matter come from in the first place? Well, can't answer that. Then what have you actually answered then? If you don't actually say where all the matter in the universe that was concentrated at this superheated point, where did it all come from? If you can't answer that, what have you actually answered? So it's a problem in the beginning because the theory doesn't even tell you where the matter came from. It's a problem in the middle because the actual moment of the Big Bang is actually scientifically and mathematically impossible to describe in any kinds of mathematical terms because it's beyond the jurisdiction of what scientists have ever been able to perceive. Therefore, scientists call this the singularity. They can't actually mathematically describe what was that superheated point where all matter was concentrated and from which everything exploded. You can't describe it. And it's a problem at the end, because even if you ignore the first problem, you ignore the second problem, and you say, let's just take it for granted there was a big bang. It's still a problem, because where in our experience does order come from disorder? You know, imagine I said I went into a factory where there was ink and paper, and I detonated a bomb inside of it, and then this book came flying out. And just somehow or other it fits together as a book. And somehow or other there's words on it. And somehow or other the words even make sense. And somehow or other there's page numbers on it and they're in order. But it all came out of a detonated bomb in a printing factory. I mean, it just makes no sense at all. And the universe is unlimitedly more complex. So therefore, you can only conclude that those who don't believe in God, it can't be philosophical. They must have some deeper emotional reason why they don't want to believe in God. Because philosophically, it just makes no sense at all. Therefore, you see, these people who are violently atheistic clearly have emotional instability. Like, for example, there was this Richard Dawkins at one point. Maybe he's still going, I don't know. But he was going around, the world on this whole campaign that there's probably no God, so just have a good time. Debating, all his time and energy to disprove God. But if you think about it, if everything's matter, if there's no God, if we were born randomly, we die randomly, we're here randomly, and there's no meaning to life, then if everything's matter, nothing matters. So why is he so interested to tell the world that God doesn't exist? Because if God doesn't exist and everything's matter, nothing matters, so just have a good time, relax. Why does he have to be so passionate to tell the world that God doesn't exist? Because according to his theory, everything is meaningless anyway. So clearly you can see that someone has a deep emotional resistance against God or religion. This is the only reason one would be so passionate. And so Krishna says this is demoniac. Because as soon as you take God out of the picture, then you take truth out of the picture. And as soon as you take truth out of the picture, you bring illusion into the picture. And as soon as you bring illusion into the picture, there's ignorance, and therefore there's suffering. So that's the trajectory. And that's why when Krishna says it's demoniac, he's not just making some kind of sectarian statement, if you don't do this, you're a demon. But it's factual. Because as soon as you take God out and everything becomes just matter, then know for sure there's going to be suffering in the world. And so, Krishna is the one who designed this world. The variety didn't come about by chance. The variety comes about because Krishna designs it. And the way Krishna creates variety in this world is through the three modes of material nature. So Krishna creates this world, and then he creates three energies. Tamas, ignorance; Rajas, passion; and Sattva, goodness. And then what Krishna does is he creates all the different varieties of species, all the different varieties of environments, all the different varieties of planets, all the different varieties of mentality, all according to a mix of the three modes of material nature. Krishna explains that whatever modes you associate with externally, those modes are ultimately inculcated by you internally. And whatever modes you have internally, you will also create those kind of modes externally. And according to one's modes of nature, it then determines their free will to act according to intelligence. Why do you think it is sometimes that someone knows the right thing to do, but they still can't do it? Why can't we do that? Why can't we act? Even though we know, it clearly means that the modes of nature are covering you. Therefore, if one is in ignorance and passion, then what will happen is one's intelligence will be covered. And therefore, even they know something, they won't be able to act on it. Therefore, how do we avoid fluctuation in enthusiasm? One has to make sure that they don't become overcome by the modes of ignorance and passion. When Srila Prabhupada came to America, then he wrote a poem, Rajastama Guna Era Sabhaya Chan Vasudeva Katha Ruchi Nahese Prashan. He was coming to America, he was looking and he says, most of the population here is absorbed in the material modes of passion and ignorance, and therefore they have no taste for the message of Krishna. So one loses their enthusiasm when they become overcome by the modes of passion and ignorance. And therefore the great devotees, Stitam Sattve Prasidati, Evam Prasanna Manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam, Stitam Sattve Prasidati. They transcend ignorance, passion. They learn to live a life in the mode of goodness, eat food in the mode of goodness, be around people in the mode of goodness, develop habits in the mode of goodness, and then your consciousness is clear. And then the enthusiasm, the ability, the strength of mind to follow your intelligence and what's good for you, that immediately comes. Therefore, 100 of the 700 verses in the Gita are all about the three modes of material nature. Because although the three modes of material nature are entirely material, unless you know the environment that you're living in, you won't be able to transcend beyond it. And therefore Krishna says that goodness is the platform. If you live in the mode of goodness, you maximize your relationships improve, your character improves, your health improves, your achievements and your ability to reach your potential improves, and ultimately your opportunity to awaken spiritual consciousness improves. So the three modes of material nature are pervading everywhere. Krishna says practically everyone in the material world is overcome by the three modes of nature. They have no idea. The three modes of material nature are the reason that there are atheists. Because to be an atheist, you need God's help. So therefore what God does is He creates the world, and then He creates the mode of ignorance, and then the person gets covered by the mode of ignorance and then comes up with an atheistic theory. Because unless you were covered by the mode of ignorance, you wouldn't be able to do it. Because it's just too ludicrous. It doesn't make any sense at all. Therefore, it's amazing. Krishna, he actually facilitates people to disbelieve in Him. And therefore, even us, and what to say, here we're speaking of the atheists, but maybe there's a little bit of atheist even within each of one of us. Because an atheist means someone who tries to take God out of the picture. But maybe even though we believe in Krishna, maybe in many parts of the day we're also trying to take God out of the picture. So maybe there's a little bit of a psychological atheist within each one of us. And because of that psychological atheist, our enthusiasm is wavering. So gradually the devotee moves beyond ignorance and passion. They go into sattva. But sattva is not the goal. Sattva is just a springboard, and from there we become transcendental. And then when we're transcendental, we almost go beyond the material world. Someone who is transcendental, they're living in this world, but they're living in a different space of consciousness. And therefore we even find sometimes with the avatars of the Lord, like Rishabdev. Rishabdev, because it's completely transcendental, beyond the three modes of nature. They don't function according to the modes, they function according to a different paradigm. And therefore they're able to live and function and perform activities and do things which are beyond the restrictions of the material nature. And it said that even a devotee who has become fully spiritually realized and beyond the modes, to some extent they also begin to transcend the limitations. Therefore, for example, the greatest devotees, they hardly have to sleep. The Nidra Hara Vihara Gadi Vijido Chatyanta Dino Chayo. The Goswamis were sleeping maybe 1 hour a day. Because they were just so transcendental. Ahara, they hardly need to eat. Because they've become so transcendental. So like this, as one goes beyond the modes, then they become less and less restricted by the material world. And so this is the ingenious setup that Krishna has created in this world. Foolish people think it came about by chance. But Krishna says, no, I deliberately created this world, number one. Foolish people too think that all the varieties are there by chance. Krishna says, no, I created the three modes of nature so that all these varieties can be there, just like three primary colors, red, blue, yellow, then come together to give a whole spectrum. The three modes are what create the varieties. And then three, Krishna explains that if you actually want to be fixed in intelligence, fixed in enthusiasm, then it means you have to go higher up in the modes. You have to be situated in goodness. And in goodness you have clarity. And therefore, when you know something is right, then you'll act according to it. And eventually, the goal is not simply to be in goodness, but the goal is to transcend. And when you transcend, then you go beyond the limitations of this world. Because ultimately, this world is just a limitation. This body is like a straitjacket. We have so much we want to experience. We have so much we want to feel. We have so much we want to achieve in our life. But this body is a very, it's a limitation. I'm feeling a little sick, so I feel, like, physically at least. So I'm feeling that limitation. So it's a limitation, the body. But as soon as one becomes transcendental, the limitation of the body doesn't affect them in the same way. So these are all the amazing truths that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita. And this was my short attempt to string together the three modes, enthusiasm and Rishabdev. Okay, let me stop there and see what questions you may have. Yes?
Thank you for this wonderful knitting together the topic. I'm surprised. Beyond. And the psychological atheist, how could we detect him? I would be interested to know. Is it that when he goes off too much to the modes of passion and ignorance? I want to hear more about it.
Yeah, so there are different kinds of atheists in this world. One type of atheist is a default atheist. They're the people who haven't even thought about these bigger questions. They just say, anyway, God probably doesn't exist. I'll just get on with life. Another type of atheist is a philosophical atheist. They say, I don't believe in God because I've studied science and I believe in the Big Bang, I believe in evolution. Another type of atheist is an emotional atheist. They're the ones that disbelieve in God because they have some bitterness towards God. Something bad happened in my life, something bad happened in the religion, therefore God definitely doesn't exist because how could he have done this to me? Then Srila Prabhupada says another type of atheist is the covered atheist. That's the impersonalist. Because they say they believe in God, but then what they do is they equate themselves with God. So that's also atheism. The normal atheist says God is here, we are here. The default emotional and philosophical atheists bring God down. There's no one up there. Bring him down. And then we're equal. But what the covered atheist, he says, no, God is there, but we're also there. So they look like a theist, but it's actually atheism. Because whether you're equal here or you're equal here, you've removed the distinction, therefore you've removed relationship. Therefore, it's atheism. So Prabhupada was ingenious. He said another type of atheist is the atheist you don't seem to believe, you may not immediately perceive. That's the impersonalist, covered atheist. Then there are also transcendental atheists. That's the residents of Vrindavan. They're not exactly atheists because they believe in Narayan, but when they look at Krishna, they're like, Krishna, he's not God, he's my friend. And therefore they even see beyond God. Of course they believe in Narayan. And then there is the psychological atheist. That's the person who believes in God, who talks about God, who sings for God, who serves God, who says they want to love God, but then in their life, their activities don't reflect that. We want to give something to Krishna, we want to give something to God, but then we leave some part of our life disconnected from God. And that disconnected part is the atheistic part of our life. So therefore, when one becomes more advanced, Krishna says, Madchita, Madgata Prana, Bodhayanta Parashparam. This beautiful Sanskrit. Krishna says, the pure devotees, Madgata Prana, their lives enter into me. We have a sense that I have my life and Krishna enters into my life. Krishna is there for this part of my life, on this day, at this time. And then the others, that's off limits. That's my time. Me time. Me time. But for the pure devotee, Madgata Prana, their life enters into Krishna. And therefore they're not living their own life. They're living in Krishna's life. And they're just a part of Krishna's life. That's very beautiful. That's what the devotees are trying to do. That's why when we have these artis in the day, what we're actually trying to do is live in Krishna's world. Why do we have an arti at 4:30 in the morning? You may well have asked that question when the alarm goes off. Why do we have an arti so early? Because yes, in the spiritual world, that's when Krishna wakes up. And we're living after all in Krishna's life. So we should also wake up. And why do we have an arti at 7 o'clock? Because that's when Krishna has his breakfast. So then, that's an important part of the day. We should have an arti to remember Krishna has just been dressed and he's now having his breakfast. Why do we have an arti at 12:30? Because that's an important part of the day. Krishna has gone out with the cowherd boys into the pasturing grounds and he's having lunch somewhere. We should remember. After all, we're living in Krishna's life. Why do we have an arti at 4:15? Because after lunch, Krishna goes and he takes rest. LSD, left side down, good for digestion. And at 4:15, Krishna wakes up. So we have an arti. Why do we have an arti at 7 o'clock? Yes, that's an important part of Krishna's day because that's when Krishna comes back. Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj are waiting. When is Krishna coming? And then they see in the horizon a cloud of dust. Oh yes, all the cows are coming, the calves. That means Krishna and the cow. 7 o'clock, they all come back. Why do we have arati at 9 o'clock? That's significant, because that's the time when Krishna goes to bed. His mother and father think. Of course, he does go to bed, but then after he goes to bed, he wakes up and escapes again in the middle of the night, back in time for Mangalarti. So can you begin to see? The devotee is actually trying to live in Krishna's world. So the psychological atheist is one who brings Krishna into some parts of their life. But then eventually the pure devotee is one who enters into Krishna's life. So right now that may seem very far for us. But by adding more and more Krishna, then eventually Krishna attracts our mind, Manohara. And when Krishna attracts our mind, then it becomes impossible to not remember Krishna. So that is the journey that we're on. Just like when you go into the Ganga, in the beginning to go in, the waves push you out. It feels very difficult to go in. But if you keep trying, then what happens at a certain point is there's an undercurrent. And then at one point, instead of pushing you out, the Ganga pulls you in. So right now it feels very hard to remember Krishna. One devotee said to Prabhupada, sometimes I forget Krishna. Prabhupada said, you always forget Krishna. Sometimes you remember him. But eventually what happens is that remembrance of Krishna becomes very natural. But that means one has to keep adding with quantity and with quality. And then we overcome our tendency to be psychologically atheist. It's amazing that you can do the most devotional activities and be thinking about yourself. You can be leading a kirtan, glorifying Krishna, and be thinking about how everyone is perceiving you. You can be reading from Krishna's words, giving a lecture, delivering Krishna's knowledge, and you can be thinking, how is everyone thinking about me? So we have this tendency to be right in front of Krishna, but to see ourselves. It's very deep. Once I was in a room and I was going back and forth chanting, it was just like this. There was a beautiful picture of Krishna and Balaram. And after 1 hour, I realized that every time I was walking towards the picture, instead of seeing Krishna Balaram, I was seeing my own reflection in the photo frame. I was like, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? That's amazing. You can be right in front of Krishna and Balaram, and instead you're looking at your own reflection. That's how rooted in our own self-absorption we've become. So it takes time to change that. So that psychological atheism is very deep-rooted. So when we read these things in the Gita, it's easy to think, oh yeah, that's for those guys out there. But actually this is us.
Is it perhaps what's meant with the weakness of heart?
Hridaya Daurbalyam, yeah. And weakness of heart also means the inability to act according to the best of our knowledge. Yeah. Thank you. So any other questions?
Maharaj,
Yes.
in your lecture you mentioned that we need to know a bit of this world also, our environment. So how far should we explore this world, know what the modes, and then decide, even though we have transcendental knowledge, but we still explore this world but not transcend. How far should we explore it, linger in the modes, and then decide to, okay, I have to transcend it?
Means when we're learning about the modes, all of it is connected to Krishna. Because learning about ignorance and passion is helping us to be free from ignorance and passion. And being free from ignorance and passion means to be in goodness, in which we're naturally connected to Krishna. So all of this knowledge, why does Krishna give 100 or 700 verses on the three modes of nature? Because it's very important. Even right in the beginning of the 14th chapter, where Krishna introduces the three modes of nature, then what does Krishna say? I shall declare to you the supreme knowledge, the best of all knowledge, knowing which the sages have attained the supreme perfection. By becoming fixed in this knowledge of the three modes, one can attain transcendental nature like my own. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution. So the three modes of nature and knowledge of it is not, this is all transcendental knowledge, because it's helping you to become transcendental. Unless you know the environment, people want to talk about so many high things in the spiritual world, but factually we're overcome by ignorance and passion. How will we be able to understand the love affairs of Radha and Krishna if we're still attracted by the things of this world? We can't. Therefore, we have to become free from the modes of nature, otherwise where is the purity to understand the beauty of the spiritual world? We cannot be moved. Therefore it's said that if one wants to relish rasa, rasa means transcendental taste, you have to give up the lower rasa. Raso varjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivardate. Only having given up the lower taste can you relish the higher taste. So for most people, this knowledge is the most important, because there's no access to the deeper esoteric spiritual realities until and unless one is established in this. Therefore, if you look at all of Srila Prabhupada's lectures, most of them were on basic points of the material world, because most people are struggling with this. And therefore, this is very important to understand, because we are defeating ourselves by allowing ourselves to be subjected to ignorance and passion. Your diet is not just what you eat, it's what you watch, it's what you hear, it's what kind of people you associate with, it's what kind of environment you surround yourselves with. All of these things are your diet. So if your diet is ignorance and passion, well, then it's clear what your consciousness will be. So, this is so important. Anyone else? Yes?
How to deal with expectations in this material relations which we have with friends and family, because I feel that that is where the different emotions come into picture, right? If you're expecting something, you're not getting it, then you behave in a certain different way. But if, let's say, someone did what you're expecting, then you will be good to them by default. So how to be same in all type of response, how to deal with expectations in general.
So in this world we have relationships and we have expectations of other people, and how to deal with it when people don't live up to our expectations, how to still be equal, how to not. See, we have expectations of people because we have a vacuum within ourselves. Therefore, our expectations of other people affect us. when you're more and more spiritually connected, when you're more and more Krishna conscious, then you're so filled with Krishna's love that you can interact with people around you, and you can give the best of yourself to them, and whether they reciprocate or they don't reciprocate, whether they act in this way or that way, actually it doesn't affect you because you're already fulfilled. But the problem for most of us is that we're not fulfilled. We're empty because we don't have a relationship with Krishna. And because we're empty, we form all these relationships with people where we're looking to get something from them to fill that emptiness. And then sometimes they give and sometimes they don't give. And then we become caught in the ups and downs of that. So when one is, that's why the great saintly people, they can serve continuously without any need for reciprocation because they're connected to God. So they're not looking to get anything from anyone. So that doesn't mean we shouldn't look for reciprocation in relationships. That doesn't mean, but it just means that know for sure that when you're more connected with Krishna, you have a greater ability to connect with others selflessly. But the less that you're connected with Krishna, know for sure that your connections in this world will be more selfishly motivated. And then expectations and all these things will cause fluctuation. So we, as devotees, we try to keep our expectations of others lower because we understand people have material attachments, they have material desires, they have anarthas, they have everything they're struggling with. So in one sense, it's not surprising that they act often in ways that don't, that don't please us. Because everyone is a victim of the age of Kali. So, but yeah, it all depends on your spiritual accomplishment. That's why if we don't become Krishna conscious, if we don't connect with Krishna, we'll constantly feel let down by the relationships of this world. Because we'll be expecting so much of them and it won't come. Because people are struggling. Does that help?
Yeah. At least to me.
Yes.
Do you have any personal stories to share about divine timing, the beauty of divine timing?
Divine timing? Yeah, so everything is happening according to the plan of Krishna. Sometimes we feel we have a plan. We have an idea of what should happen, how it should happen, and when it should happen. This is very clear in our mind. We look at our life and we know what should happen, how it should happen, and when it should happen. But actually, on all three of these points, Krishna knows better than us. And therefore, we think, I know what should happen, how it should happen, when it should happen, and then I'll get here. But what Krishna will do is he'll bring you here, but he may know a better way of how to do it, what to do, and when to do it. And therefore, only one who has the ability to be detached from their plans and synchronize with the higher will of providence, only that person can actually be peaceful in this world. Otherwise you'll be constantly frustrated because Krishna always changes the plans. So, I guess in many small or big ways in all of our lives, we've seen that Krishna has changed the how, what and when. And it's very frustrating. But then when one is very reflective, when one always looks back when one looks back, then they can see that there was always a divine hand there that was moving things beyond my intelligence. Like for many years now, I've tried to keep up the practice of journaling. So it's very, very powerful, because if you want to try to decode how divinity, how God is working in your life, then journaling is very, very powerful. Because now I have like over 25 years of journals, and you can look back and see how your life was being moved in such a way where in that moment you had no idea. But later on you look back and you can join all the dots. They say you have to live life looking forwards, but you can only understand it looking backwards. And so in small or big ways, Krishna always changes the plans, because he's like an expert chess player. Good chess player, average chess players can think about 4 moves ahead. Really good chess players can think about 8 moves ahead. But Krishna, he's 100 moves ahead. And therefore he's moving the board in a way that we have no idea. Like, where is this going? Where are you going with this? It's completely baffling. Therefore, you can't try to understand God. You just have to love God. Because if you try to understand God, you'll be baffled. Even Bhishma Dev said to the Pandavas, Nahyasya karhichit papan puman veda viditsitam yad vijigyasaya yukta muyanti kavayo pihi. The Pandavas suffered so much. And Bhishma Dev looked at them and said, it's completely, we can't understand why you had to go through what you went through. If anyone tries to understand the plan of Krishna, they'll be baffled. It's too complicated. But if you love someone, then even when you don't understand what they do, you'll still be able to go with it. Isn't it? Like, say for example, you know someone really well, and then they do something like out of character. It never causes you to doubt them, because you love them. And you know, if they've done this, even though I can't understand it, there must be something behind it. So it's the same with Krishna. When you love Krishna, then even when you don't understand Krishna, you can still align yourself with his plan. And when you align yourself with his plan, then you make progress towards your goal way faster than what it would have been if you had gone with your plan. Therefore, divinity creates a divine flow for our life. And if you align yourself with that flow and you move with the current of the divine plan, then it goes very, very quick. But in order to do that, one has to have trust, one has to have faith, one has to have that love. So divine timing, divine planning, divine arranging, this is one of the arts of life, how to accept God's plan. Hare Krishna. Yes.
One question now, Maharaji. Most of us, we remember God when we are in difficult times, but how not to forget God when everything is smooth in our life?
Most of us remember God in difficult times. But how to remember God in good times. See, it depends what aspect of God you're connecting to. Most people are only connecting to God as the person who solves problems. Most people are only connecting to God as the controller of the universe. Most people are only connecting to God as the supreme absolute truth. This is a very formal connection with God. And such people who have a formal connection with God, they tend to call upon God in times of need. Because according to God's formal position, He's the one that can help them. But there's another aspect of God, which is God at home. God who is very sweet. God who is very charismatic, charming, very beautiful. God who can capture your mind because of His incredible qualities. That God is Krishna. And that God, you don't go to Krishna just for a need. You go to Krishna because He's so beautiful. And so a beautiful person, you don't go to them just when you're in need. You go to them at all times. But because most people haven't connected to the beauty of God, they've just connected to the formality of God. Therefore, they only go to God in times of difficulty. But what we call the Rasika Bhaktas, the ones who have learned to taste the sweetness of God, the ones who have connected with the beauty of God, they go to God at all times. Good times or bad times. God is beautiful. We go there. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada also gave us all the access, all the windows to the spiritual world. So this we must connect to Krishna's beauty. That Krishna is not just a cosmic order supplier. Krishna is not just the port of call in times of need and want. Krishna is not just the one who has his finger on all the buttons so he can change the universe as is required. Krishna is not just, the top manager of the universe, and if you know the manager, then you can get whatever you need to get done. No, Krishna is your best friend, and He's so sweet, and He's so lovable. So why not? I always want to be with Krishna, good times or bad times. Yes?
Maharaj, you mentioned about journaling. Can you give us some practical tips on journaling?
So if you go on YouTube, there's a... if you go on YouTube and do a search, then you put in journaling workshop, Keshava Swami, then I do a 2-hour workshop on journaling. I also show my journals in that and how I journal. So you can watch that because it will be more comprehensive. But essentially in a journal, you're writing your observations of life. You write your observations of yourself, your observations of other people, your observations of the world, your observations of Krishna acting. In other words, there's so much to learn from what we see every single day. But because we don't reflect on it, therefore we don't become wiser. So at the end of the day, you can observe yourself in your journal. How was I? How was my character? In what situations did the best of me come out? In what situations did I struggle? What aspects do I need to work on? You can write your observations of other people. What good did I see in other people today? What struggles did I see other people encounter, and why did they encounter those struggles? You can write your observations of the world. What's happening in the world? How does what I'm reading in Shastra relate to what I saw today? And you can write your observations of Krishna. How was Krishna active in my life? What do I think Krishna was teaching me today? In what ways did Krishna intervene or arrange something? These are all things that you can write in your journal. And as you begin to write these things, then you become more wise from all your observations. Because the experiences that we go through every single day are life's most powerful and persistent teacher. Your own experiences are your most powerful and persistent teacher. But most of us don't reflect on our experiences. They just come and they go. And therefore we don't learn from them. Therefore, if you do something like journaling, you can consciously reflect on what's happening.
are there any formats in like best practices in where devotees coming or any types of gatherings that are suitable for sharing? Perhaps the
Gatherings?
Yes, is there any forum where devotees can share their journaling, the gist of their journey, or what would be good? Are you aware of any initiatives where devotees
They share their journals?
their realizations?
Their realizations. I don't know, I mean many devotees write like blogs and other things where they share their thoughts, but I don't know of anything like that.
And in speaking, what would be a good timing if you want to share? Are there any initiatives where devotees, where there is more time after a lecture, for instance, or special dedicated meetings that you know of, that devotees are in the practice of having time to go
reflect on things? I don't know. I mean, in different temples, they may do different things. Like I know when I used to live in one temple in India, then what they would do is after the class, they all would get together and in a circle, they would all say like the most important thing that they took away from that lecture. I was just with His Holiness Sachinanda Maharaj as well, and he says that every time he goes with his team of devotees and they go away from a program, then in the car journey back, they always share with each other what was the main thing that I took away. So I think they call this in Sanskrit anumodan. It means like to reflect on what you've just heard. So we can do things like that. But yeah, I guess we just have to be creative. Find what way to do mananam, or become more contemplative, like that. Okay, yes.
Swamiji, it is often said that everything happens for a good reason in long term. Is that true? Means, let's say, worst thing happened to a specific person. Let's say he might be with an accident. So is that true that, okay, everything happens for a good reason in long run?
So let me ask you two questions. Number one, is Krishna in control of everything? Okay. Question number two, is Krishna your best friend? Okay. So now there's one person in your life who's in control of everything and who at the same time is your best friend. So that by definition means everything that's happening to you must be for your benefit. That doesn't mean it's easy. That doesn't mean it's pretty. That doesn't mean it's not hard. But definitely it's for your good. Therefore, it's not that everything in life that happens is good, but something good can come from everything that happens in life. Understand? Therefore, yes, if you have the right disposition, then you can turn the most difficult situations into great opportunities. That's what the Pandavas did, right?
But let's say I was not able to find out that opportunity to make the bad thing into a good opportunity. Let's say I missed it. But then also at the end, it will happen. For
Krishna will give you another chance. And that's what happens to most of us. Because we miss the opportunity to learn, then Krishna sends it again. Have you often noticed in your life the same thing? The same obstacle keeps coming again and again and again. Why? Because we don't learn. So Krishna gives you another chance. Therefore, if you surround yourself with spiritual people, you surround yourself with spiritual wisdom, then you'll have more chance when you go through life's situations to learn what you're meant to learn from it. But if you stay away from wisdom, if you stay away from spiritual people, and if you live in your own small bubble in the chaos of this material world, you're going to be lost. You're going to be lost. How are you going to be able to register it all? We'll be overcome by our own emotions. But that's what most people do. Therefore, never keep a distance from devotees and never keep a distance from the scripture. Make those two things the closest thing in your life. Because when you keep the scripture close to your heart, and when you keep good devotee friends close to your heart, it doesn't matter what you go through, you'll be able to grow through it. You won't go through problems, you'll grow through problems. But most of people don't do that. Even those who are in our movement, in the spiritual process, they keep too much of a distance. And then you're out there in the material world. It's a difficult place. It's a jungle out there. Not an easy place. So give yourself the best chance of learning.
So for a spiritual being, since he is aware of the scriptures and he is in the satsang and spiritually aware, but what for non-spiritual person, if something happens to him, let's say something bad happens to him, in long go, whether Krishna is taking care of him also, or no, you are not believer of me, then I will not take care of you, something like that.
In one sense, there's no such thing as a non-spiritual person. Everyone is spiritual. We're just covered to different degrees. So we are covered maybe 20%. Someone else is covered 40%. Someone else is covered 60%. Someone else is covered 95%. But even someone covered 95%, something may spark in the other 5% to make them think, I need to get out of this. There's something wrong here. And even they can come out. So remember the modes of nature. Ignorance means 95% covered. Passion means 60 to 70% covered. And goodness means very less covering. And so yes, someone who even goes through a difficulty who's not spiritual, or not, covered 95%, they tomorrow might be the person walking through this door. Because even they, by their free will, can use that struggle to come out of their illusion. Krishna never takes that free will away. Otherwise, what would be the point? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I was once collecting donation for Janmashtami. I took donation from a lady, she gave me, and then she asked me, will Krishna love me now? So I told her, even if he didn't give, he will still love you.
Yeah.
So
give me my money back.
So even if you're not favorable to Krishna, he still loves you. So,
yeah, of course. Krishna says, Na me dvesho stina priya. Samoham sarva bhuteshu na me dvesho stina priya. Krishna says, I'm equal to all. I don't envy anyone. I'm not against anyone. But then what does Krishna say in the next two lines? Ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mai te te shuchapi aham. But one who renders service to me, then Krishna says, I'm specially inclined towards them. So yes, if you give, but you don't just give from the head, you have to give from the heart. Don't just give from the head because you think if I give this, then according to the calculation in my head, I'll get this back. If you give from the heart, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yo Me Bhaktya Prayachati. Putting bhakti in the front. Bhakti Upaditam. Then Krishna is conquered by that. So yes. Give. You can begin by giving from the head. It's also good. But then it has to come from the heart.
So this also, that the friendship, the interest in becoming a friend with Krishna is our interest, right? Like, because also, I posed the question, that it can be very hard just to deal with setbacks by ourselves, but I need a good friend to deal with that, and Krishna is the best friend. Also, how to avoid starting to resent Krishna if something bad happens, because you pointed out, Maharaj, that it's an ongoing theme in the world, and so if I didn't make a friendship with Krishna, then I'm not ready for setbacks. So, because I will resent Krishna automatically.
Therefore, how to not become frustrated with God when we go through all our difficulties in life. That's why Krishna makes all the great devotees also go through difficulty. Why did Srila Prabhupada have to go through so many difficulties? Why did the Pandavas have to go through so many difficulties? Why did Prahlad Maharaj have to go through so many difficulties? To show us, number one, that everyone has to go through it. And to show us, number two, how to go through it with grace. See, Prahlad, he was going through all those difficulties, but he just saw Krishna everywhere. They said, Prahlad, were you not scared when they threw you into a pit of snakes? Prahlad said, Vishnu is my father, and he rests upon Anantashesh, and all these snakes are servants of Anantashesh. Therefore, if you throw me into the pit where they are the servants of the servant of my father, do you think they'll do anything to me? He said, but Prahlad, were you not scared when they threw you into a fire? He said, my father is Vishnu, and according to Shastra, Yagyavai Vishnu, the fire of Yagya is the mouth of Vishnu. So do you think that if you throw me into the mouth of my father, he'll eat me? Prahlad, were you not scared that they fed you poison? So when they were churning the milk ocean, poison came out and Lakshmi also came out. So that means Lakshmi and poison are brother and sister. And if Vishnu is my father, Lakshmi is my mother, then that means poison is my uncle. So do you think he will hurt me? So Krishna says, Yo mam pasyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pasyati tasyaham na pranashyami sachame na pranashyati. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. Must develop that vision that yes, whatever's happening, Krishna's hand is there, and he's more clever than any living entity, and he knows the fastest way to bring me back. So yes, Krishna might turn up the heat, like I was saying this morning, because we don't have the desire. So Krishna has to accelerate things, otherwise we're going to be here for a long time. So better than being comfortable in the illusion is to accept the discomfort of the illusion and get out to the reality. Better than the comfort of illusion is the discomfort that navigates you to reality. That's the mantra that the devotee has to keep in their head. Do I want to be comfortable in the illusion, or do I want to embrace the discomfort that navigates me to reality? And when you say the second one, then you're ready to embrace whatever it takes. Easier said than done. Good luck.
This is called surrender, is it?
Nayanam galara shudharaya vatanam gadgada rudaya gira pulake nichitam vapu kada tavanama grahane pavishyati saya. Ashlishyava padaratam vinashtuma madarshanan marmahatam karotu va yatha tatha va vidadhatu lampato mat prana nathastu saeva na padaha. Krishna, if you embrace me, or you make me broken-hearted by not being before me, you're free to act in whatever way you want to act, because you're always my worshipable Lord. So, it's going to take all the ingredients to get back. A lot of inspiration, and maybe a little bit of inconvenience as well. Krishna gives you the perfect balance of inspiration and inconvenience to get out of the illusion. Hare Krishna. So on that light note, okay, so there's no last questions, right? Okay, I think we can stop here.